Hana stood at the edge of the research hall, scanning her notes as she waited for the next project briefing to begin. Her pen hovered just above the margin, where she'd scribbled a quote from Dr. Kwon's latest paper line she planned to reference during the discussion. She glanced across the room where Dr. Kwon and two senior researchers were in quiet conversation. He gave her a quick, warm smile and a small wave. Hana returned it politely before going back to her notes. Then she felt a shift in the air, subtle but tangible. She looked up again and caught Elise entering the room, her usual poise intact, but her eyes were colder than usual when they flicked in Hana's direction. The two women had never been particularly close, but they'd managed civil, even cordial interactions since Elise's arrival. Today felt different. Elise slid into the seat beside Jiwoo, leaning toward him slightly as she spoke. Jiwoo didn't move. His posture remained neutral, his expression unreadable, but Hana noticed he didn't look at Elise once. His focus stayed locked on the tablet in front of him, nodding only occasionally, his responses brief. Did something happen? She pushed the thought away, reminding herself to focus. The meeting began, and for the next 40 minutes, Hana kept her tone professional, engaged with clear, insightful questions, and when Dr. Kwon deferred to her input, Jiwoo met her gaze with quiet approval. But still, the tension lingered. Later, as she left the room, Hana slowed when she heard hushed voices in the adjacent corridor. "She's more ambitious than she looks," Elise's voice floated through the crack in the door. "She knows exactly what she's doing around the men here." "You're way out of line," came Jiwoo's voice, sharper than she'd ever heard it. "This stops now." Silence. Hana backed away before she could hear more, her heart pounding. The rooftop garden was one of Hana's favorite spots at the hospitala, place where the city noise faded just enough for her to breathe. She often came there between meetings or when the weight of expectations pressed in too tightly. She didn't expect anyone else to be there. But when she pushed the door open, Jiwoo was already standing near the railing. He seemed engrossed in his own thoughts, yet looked in control. Whatever he was thinking about made him look less like the CEO of Kang Medical and more like the man she couldn't stop thinking about. He turned when he heard the door click shut behind her. "Hana." His voice was quieter than usual, measured, but sincere. She gave a polite nod, instinctively falling back into formality. "Mr. Kang." That made his brow twitch. She hadn't called him that in weeks. "Are we back to that now?" he asked gently. She didn't respond, walking past him toward the far side of the garden. The breeze played with strands of her hair, and she folded her arms, not because she was cold but because something inside felt suddenly vulnerable. Jiwoo stepped closer, but not too close. "You've been distant," he said. "I wanted to ask if something happened." Hana hesitated. "I just realized it's best to keep things professional," she said, her voice soft but steady. "This project is important. I don't want anything to interfere with it." "Did someone say something to you?" he asked, watching her carefully. "No, not directly," he exhaled slowly. "If it's about Dr. Kwon, I understand your admiration. He's brilliant. But if Elise..." She turned to face him then, something flickering in her eyes. "Elise?" Jiwoo paused, weighing how much to say. Then he took a step closer, voice quiet but firm. "Earlier, as I was leaving the room, I caught a glimpse of you. Don't let the outside noise bother you." She knew it meant he guessed she had overheard Elise's comment about her. She was grateful he had shut it down immediately. His defense of her, and the way his eyes softened as he looked at her now, made her heartbeat race. "I won't let anyone twist who you are. Your work speaks for itself," he added. Hana felt a knot loosen in her chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. And for a moment, Hana saw him not just as the composed CEO or the mysterious man from that night, but someone who genuinely saw her. Someone who noticed the quiet things. She gave a faint smile, hesitant but real. "I'll remember that," she murmured. Jiwoo didn't push further. He simply stepped back and gestured toward the bench. "Want to sit for a minute before we both pretend we're not exhausted in front of the review board?" That made her laugh softly. And just like that, the ice between them began to thaw again. The following week at the hospital unfolded like a quietly simmering kettle. Hana was spending increasing time in the neurosurgical wing not because she sought it, but because the cases she was assigned began to overlap with Dr. Kwan's expertise. At first, it was coincidence. Then, it became pattern. Twice they presented cases together at interdisciplinary meetings. He praised her insights without hesitation. Once, he offered to rewrite part of a shared report just to lighten her load. Their conversations were warm, professional. But to the observant eye, it was clear, he respected her deeply. Jiwoo watched it all from a distance. In a late afternoon meeting with the hospital's senior board, he heard Dr. Kwan mention Hana's name twice, once to credit a breakthrough approach in patient recovery, and again to suggest she co-lead an upcoming departmental workshop on integrative neurology. She's sharp, intuitive, and already doing the work of someone 2 levels her senior, Elias said, casually but confidently. Jiwoo kept his features impassive. After the meeting, he lingered in the hallway, just long enough to hear the laughter Hana's voice, light and relaxed, followed by Dr. Kwan's deeper tone. They stood near the elevator, discussing an elderly patient's complex medication regimen. Harmless, friendly. Still, Jiwoo's jaw tightened ever so slightly. That evening, in his penthouse overlooking the Han River, Jiwoo stood at the window again. This time, a half-empty glass of whiskey in hand. His suit jacket was draped over a chair, the tie loosened, and yet he looked more wound up than relaxed. He tapped a finger against the rim of the glass. She hadn't called. Not that she owed him a call, but it had been days since that honest conversation. Since her eyes had searched his for truth, and he had offered it, cautiously. He had told himself that his silence was about protecting her, that she deserved the space to heal, to decide what came next on her own, that involving himself too quickly, too deeply, could only confuse her. But now there was someone else in her space, someone capable, present, and making moves without the burden of past secrets. Was it noble to wait, or cowardly? He set the glass down with a muted thud. At the hospital, Hana stayed late reviewing patient imaging files. She was tired but focused. A soft knock on the door made her look up. Dr. Kwan stepped in. "You're still here," she smiled faintly. "Just finishing up. I was heading out and thought I'd drop this off." He held up a paper-wrapped package. "Mochi from that little cafe down the road. You mentioned once your mom liked it." Hana blinked in surprise. "You remembered?" He shrugged. "I have a good memory. And I listen." She accepted the package, touched by the gesture but unsure how to respond. "Thank you." Elias lingered a second longer. "Don't work too late." As the door shut behind him, Hana stared at the mochi in her hands. It wasn't romantic. Not necessarily, but it was intentional. And she couldn't pretend she hadn't noticed how people watched them, how easy it was to talk to him, how he made her feel seen. But did he know her? The whole of her? Her gaze flickered to the small potted plant on her desk, the one Jiwoo had silently replaced after her first one wilted. He hadn't said a word, no grand gesture, just action. A flicker of tension coiled low in her chest. She set the mochi down and turned back to her files, but her focus had long since slipped. Kang Medical was preparing for the quarterly Donors Gala Grand event where hospital executives, researchers, and select medical staff would mingle with stakeholders and benefactors. The entire administration wing buzzed with last-minute adjustments and protocol briefings. Hana, not used to such formalities, had only agreed to attend at the request of her department head. She had no intention of staying long. That afternoon, she was walking through the research wing when a call from an admin assistant caught her attention. "Dr. Seo, CEO Kang, collapsed in conference room B. We think it's a stress-induced syncopal episode, but the lead consultant hasn't arrived yet." "What?" Hana's heart jumped. "Has someone done a full assessment? Vitals are being monitored. Dr. Kwan is on his way." She broke into a swift stride. When she arrived, Jiwoo was semi-conscious on the conference room couch. His face was pale, jaw tense. A nurse was holding a BP cuff on his arm, clearly frazzled. "What happened?" Hana crouched beside him, taking over with seamless calm. He stood up quickly after the meeting, looked disoriented. Brief loss of consciousness, the nurse replied. Did he eat today? Hana asked. The nurse shook his head. Jiwoo's lips parted, but his voice was hoarse. Skipped lunch. Dr. Kwon entered at that moment, pausing as he saw Hana kneeling beside Jiwoo. Vitals? He asked. BP's low. 86/54, pulse 108, Hana replied without looking up. I think it's orthostatic hypotension triggered by fatigue and prolonged fasting. Dr. Kwon knelt opposite her. Agreed. I'll start IV fluids. As the team moved into action, Hana gently helped reposition Jiwoo, speaking to him in a tone she rarely used outside patient care, soft and grounded. You're okay. Just stay with me, all right? Jiwoo's fingers twitched. His gaze found hers, eyes slightly unfocused. You came. I'm not letting you collapse on my turf, she said under her breath, pretending not to notice the way. Dr. Kwon glanced up briefly at their exchange. Minutes later, stabilized and resting, Jiwoo was wheeled into a private observation room. Hana walked with them until the elevator. I'll take it from here, Dr. Kwon said, offering a professional smile. Thank you, Dr. Seo. She hesitated for just a second, then nodded and turned away, her heart pounding from adrenaline and something else she didn't want to name. Later that evening, word of the incident had spread quickly. Whispers filled the administrative corridors. CEO Kang had collapsed. Dr. Seo had responded first. Dr. Kwon had intervened. Some said Hana had panicked. Others claimed she was composed and decisive. Only a few had seen how Jiwoo's hand had reached for hers before the gurney doors closed. Elsewhere in the hospital, Dr. Kwon caught up with her near the research lounge. You handled things well today, he said. Hana gave a modest shrug. I did what anyone would. Not everyone reacts like you did, he said. Kang Jiwoo is a powerful man, and yet, you saw him as just a patient. I don't think of him that way, she replied. Dr. Kwon looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. The gala, you'll be there? I'm not sure yet, although Director Ho insists. You should come, he said, his tone light. I think people should see the woman behind the brilliance. Hana smiled, polite but distant. I'll think about it. As he walked away, her thoughts remained tangled. Jiwoo had collapsed in front of her, and her instinct had been to protect him, not only as a patient but as someone who was her person. Even now, all she could think and worry about was Jiwoo. After her evening rounds, she returned to check on him. She reached the private VIP suite assigned to him and was just about to knock when the door swung open. Ah, you must be one of the attending physicians. A refined and elegant woman in her mid-50s said, eyeing Hana's white coat and ID badge. Beside her stood a woman of similar age who looked more like a security detail than a personal assistant. Inside stood a tall man with graying hair and a sharp gaze that said he missed nothing. Both wore the elegance of old money and soul's upper crust like second skin. Yes, Hana said, bowing slightly. Dr. Seo Hana, I was just... Good, the woman interrupted. We appreciate your team's response today. My son doesn't usually let people see when he's overworked. Son. So this was his mother and father. He's resting, the man said flatly. He doesn't need further evaluations tonight. Hana took a careful breath. Actually, I'm not here on protocol. A personal visit? His mother asked, her voice soft but laced with cold curiosity. I thought you were a doctor. Hana blinked, the implications slicing through her professionalism like ice water. I am. There was an awkward pause. Well then, Dr. Seo, thank you for doing your job today, his father added, tone dismissive. I'm sure the chief resident can take it from here. It wasn't anger that made Hana step back. It was the realization that in their eyes, she had already been labeled. Not a colleague, not someone who had once mattered to their son. Just a staff member, interchangeable and unimportant. I understand, she said simply, bowing again. Please take care of him. As she turned away, she didn't look back. She didn't see Jiwoo emerge moments later from his room, wearing a loose hospital robe and confusion etched on his face. Was someone here? He asked. His mother smiled. A young doctor. She said her name was Seo. Nothing important, just checking vitals, I believe. Jiwoo's brows furrowed as he looked toward the door, a flicker of frustration flashing in his eyes, but it was too late. Hana was already walking down the hallway, her steps quiet and steady. 2 days before the gala. The air in the hospital felt more electric than usual. The arrival of Dr. Elias Kwon, the renowned neurosurgeon, had set off a chain reaction of discussions. As Hana made her rounds, she could feel the eyes on her, the way some colleagues cast curious glances her way when she crossed their path. It wasn't that they were unfriendly, but the news of her working closely with Dr. Kwon had spread like wildfire. Yet, Hana kept her focus, knowing the gala was just around the corner. It wasn't about the spotlight for her, but the looming expectations surrounding it made her uneasy. She had agreed to go, but the thought of being in the same room as Jiwoo not wearing his CEO hat created a strange knot in her stomach. The dynamics between them were complicated, and with the Kangs and Dr. Kwon circling in her professional world, she was left to navigate the tension with both care and precision. She had just wrapped up a consult when her phone buzzed. A text from Seojin. Jiwoo's parents are in the hospital. They want to meet with Dr. Kwon. Hana's brow furrowed. She wasn't surprised given Jiwoo's family's influence, but she knew this wasn't a casual visit. Elias Kwon had become a topic of interest, and with his prodigious reputation, Jiwoo's parents would certainly want to make their presence felt. Should I go over there? She typed quickly, unsure of what Seojin wanted her to do. Seojin's response came almost immediately. They're waiting for you. Hana's heart skipped a beat. Waiting for her? She hesitated but knew she had little choice. This wasn't just about patience anymore. It was about a growing web of relationships that she had to navigate carefully. She made her way to the department's lounge, where she spotted Jiwoo's parents standing with Dr. Kwon, their body language polite but tense. Mrs. Kang's smile was crisp as always, but there was a hard edge to it. Mr. Kang, on the other hand, gave her a more scrutinizing look. Dr. Seo, it's good to see you again, Mrs. Kang greeted, her voice smooth but formal. Likewise, Hana replied, her tone professional but cautious. She could feel the weight of their expectations, but she couldn't quite place what they wanted from her. We've heard a lot about your work with Dr. Kwon, Mr. Kang added, his gaze sharp. Impressive, truly. Hana smiled politely, her discomfort rising. She had met them before briefly, but now, in this setting, it felt as if they were measuring her every word. Thank you. Dr. Kwon's work speaks for itself, she said, trying to keep the conversation neutral. Dr. Kwon gave her a smile that seemed a little more at ease than the Kang's formal demeanor. Dr. Seo's methodology in neurovascular recovery has been very impressive, he added. I'm looking forward to working more closely with her. Hana nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was as if the Kangs were assessing her not just as a doctor, but as something more. Something that didn't feel entirely professional. Well, we must let you get back to your work, Mrs. Kang said after a moment, her smile tight. It's a pleasure to see you again, Dr. Seo. Dr. Kwon, we'll see you at the gala in 2 days? Yes, of course, Elias replied smoothly. The moment they left, Hana exhaled quietly. She felt a strange mix of unease and relief. The Kangs had always been polite but distant until now. The pressure of their subtle inspection weighed heavily on her. As she turned to leave, she bumped into Jiwoo's gaze from across the room. He had arrived quietly, unnoticed by everyone but her. His eyes locked with hers for a brief moment, his expression unreadable. Dr. Seo, he said, stepping closer, his voice low. You're attending the gala in 2 days? Hana nodded, trying to keep her tone neutral. Yes, I'll be there. I'll see you there, he replied, but his voice held a hint of something, an unspoken promise, a challenge. The weight of the unspoken words hung between them. She didn't know what had changed between them, but she could feel the tension mounting. As she walked away, the realization hit her. The gala wasn't just a social event. It had become a turning point, a pressure point where all the dynamics she had been carefully balancing would come to a head. The morning of the gala arrived with a certain heaviness in the air, one that Hana couldn't shake no matter how hard she tried. She had prepared for a night of mingling with colleagues, shaking hands with the elite in her field, but now, the entire event felt like something Moria pressure she hadn't anticipated. The hospital was buzzing with anticipation of the event, the halls filled with talk of the renowned guests who would be in attendance. Hana had made her peace with attending in a purely professional capacity. She wasn't a fan of extravagant events, and the idea of standing beside Jiwoo, especially given the way things had shifted between them only, heightened her sense of discomfort. Her mind flickered back to the past few days, to the moments when Dr. Elias Kwon had appeared in her life like a fresh gust of wind. His polite admiration, his subtle compliments, had caught her off guard. But it wasn't the gentle flattery of the brilliant neurosurgeon that had her rattled, it was the unspoken tension building between her and Jiwoo. Every glance, every accidental brush of their hands, sent her heart racing, and she wasn't sure she could handle the intensity of it. She had spent years keeping a professional distance from those around her. Now, that carefully constructed barrier was crumbling, and the gala would be the test of everything she had tried to avoid. Sitting at her desk, papers scattered in front of her, she found herself staring at the invitation for the gala, the gold lettering reflecting the harsh light. She couldn't stop replaying Jiwoo's words from their last conversation, the confession he had made when he had finally revealed his feelings. His parents. The subtle discomfort in his voice when they had spoken about her. Was he ready for the change that was coming? Was she? Hana's thoughts spiraled as she imagined the evening. The long dresses, the tuxedos, the laughter and chatter. It all seemed like another world, a world she could easily become swept away in. But was she ready to let go of her grounded self for a night of glamour? A knock on her office door interrupted her thoughts. "Hana!" a voice called out, and she turned to find Dr. Kwon standing in the doorway, his posture poised, his usual calm demeanor unchanged. "Kwon," she greeted with a small smile, trying to ignore the sudden tension that seemed to fill the room at his mere presence. "Are you attending the gala tonight?" he asked, stepping inside, his voice warm and smooth. I'm still deciding," she admitted, keeping her voice professional, though her mind raced with a dozen reasons why she wasn't entirely sure about it. "Well, I think you should go. It's an important event for the hospital, and it'll be a great opportunity to connect with other professionals," he encouraged, offering his charming smile. She nodded, but inside the conflict bubbled. She wasn't so sure about connecting with anyone other than Jiwoo that night. But Dr. Kwon's words echoed in her head. It was an opportunity. She could separate her personal feelings and maintain her professionalism. After all, she had built her career on being more than just a doctor with relationships tied to a CEO. She had carved out a place for herself at the hospital because of her skills, not because of Jiwoo's name. "You're right," she finally said, offering a smile. "I'll be there." His smile widened and she maintained her calm expression, pushing away any internal reaction. His flattery had no hold over her. It was just the nature of the job, she reminded herself. A professional exchange. "Looking forward to seeing you there, Dr. Say. I have no doubt you'll be one of the most interesting people in the room." Her smile remained polite, and she simply nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Kwon. I'll see you there." As he left her office, the weight of his words lingered, but she refused to let it affect her. Brightest in the room? It was nothing more than a casual compliment. At least, that's what she told herself. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Hana barely had time to think as she moved through consultations, patient assessments, and rounds, her mind flicking between the looming gala and the tangled feelings she couldn't quite sort through. By late afternoon, she finally managed to escape to her office for a brief moment of peace. She sat behind her desk, rubbing her temples as though trying to push away the thoughts that cluttered her mind. The gala was 2 hours away. The thought of stepping into that elegant ballroom, of being surrounded by people who would expect her to smile and perform like a flawless professional, made her stomach churn. A light knock at the door startled her. She hadn't been expecting anyone, but then Jiwoo's familiar voice filtered through. "Hana!" Her heart skipped, not skipped, but steadied itself at the sound of his voice. She quickly composed herself before calling out. "Come in." Jiwoo entered, his sharp features softened by the evening light spilling in through her office window. His presence was calming, but also, at this moment, intense. It had been days since their conversation, but the weight of unspoken words between them was heavy. Resisting the pull towards him was becoming more difficult than anything she had ever had to do. It was not because he was the most attractive man she had ever seen. Indeed he was, but it was something deeper, something behind physical. An irresistible pull she could no longer deny. Nonetheless, she was realistic enough to not give in to those feelings when it might be all there was to it, just her feelings. He closed the door behind him and stepped closer to her desk, his gaze meeting hers. His usual confidence was tempered by something more personal. "You're going?" he asked simply. But there was a question in his voice, like he was checking if she had made up her mind. "I think so," Hana replied, trying to sound casual. "It's part of the job." Jiwoo's gaze lingered on her, and she could see the small hesitation in his eyes, as though he was deciding whether to push further. He stood there for a moment, hands resting on the back of the chair beside her desk, his posture relaxed but his energy focused. "You know," he said after a pause, his tone more reflective now, "I've attended my fair share of galas over the years. It's part of the job for me too. But I won't pretend it's something I'm used to. It's not always easy to juggle the expectations." Hana looked at him, surprised by his openness. His usual composure had slipped just a little, revealing a side of him she hadn't seen before. Hana nodded with a small smile. Jiwoo continued, "I get it, but I just want you to know that. You don't have to feel like you have to live up to something. Not for me, not for anyone." It hit her then, no doubts left. It was him. Her heart belonged to this man, and right now Hana hoped she was doing a good job hiding her feelings. Jiwoo's words hung in the air, their quiet honesty reaching her in a way that made her chest tighten. She hadn't expected this vulnerability from him, especially not now, when everything between them was so tangled. But in a way, his sincerity comforted her. It made her feel seen, not as a colleague, not as someone working under him, but as herself. Just Hana. "I know," she said softly, meeting his gaze with a new understanding. "I just need to make sure I'm doing the right thing for me, Jiwoo. Not just because it's expected of me." He gave her a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes, but there was a softness there. "Something real? Well, I guess that's all any of us can do, right?" he said, stepping back from her desk, his shoulders slightly slumped in an unspoken release. "I'll see you at the gala then." Hana nodded, feeling a small sense of relief, even though she knew the evening was still going to be complicated. There were too many layers to their relationship, too much left unsaid. But for the moment, they had both agreed to move forward, at least for tonight. "See you there," she replied, offering him a smile. But as he turned to leave, something about the way he walked out of her office made her feel as though a door had been quietly, firmly closed. Not in a bad way, but in a way that suggested the night ahead might hold more than she had anticipated. Hana's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the collar of her suit in front of the mirror, her reflection looking back at her in muted light. The gala was just an hour away, and she had finally decided on the soft, vibrant pink suit that complemented her. The only concern was the bright color drawing too much attention. She had few formal clothes and it was simple, formal enough. But as she brushed her dark curly hair back, her mind kept returning to Jiwoo, to that moment in her office. The way he had looked at her, not as a colleague or as the hospital's rising star, but simply as Hana. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen not for her achievements, not for the expectations people had placed on her but as herself. She replayed their shared conversations about childhood memories, school days, career dreams, and the hopes they held for the future like a cherished song on repeat. The ring of her phone snapped her from her thoughts. It was a text from Jiwoo saying, "I'll be waiting for you at the entrance. If you need anything, just let me know." Hana stared at the message for a moment, her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to be so direct, but somehow it fit. He was always so confident in his words, in his presence. But now something was different. She couldn't quite place it, but his invitation to meet at the entrance felt personal. She quickly typed a response, trying to maintain her usual composure. "I'll be there in a few minutes. See you soon." The message sent, and she set her phone down, her eyes returning to her reflection. What was she doing? Why had she agreed to go? She wasn't even sure. The gala was supposed to be a work event, a chance to meet new people, to further her career. But now, with Jiwoo's words lingering in her mind, it felt like so much more. She didn't know what he expected of her, or what she expected of him. After their conversation earlier, it was clear there was an unspoken connection, a tension between them that neither had fully addressed. And now, at this moment, in the quiet before the storm, Hana realized she was walking into that storm without fully knowing where it would lead. The grand ballroom was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, casting a warm, inviting glow on the sea of tuxedos and gowns below. Guests mingled, laughter and soft conversation filling the space as waiters moved through the crowd, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvre. Hana stood near the entrance, trying her best to keep her composure. She had spent the entire car ride trying to convince herself that this was just another evening, another event to navigate. But the moment her eyes landed on Jiwoo, standing near the front, waiting for her, everything shifted. He looked every bit the CEO that he was, confident, composed, his tailored suit sharp against the soft lighting. His presence drew people in, but as soon as he caught sight of her, his gaze softened. For a moment, it was like she was the only person in the room. She walked towards him, her steps slow and deliberate. When she reached him, Jiwoo offered a small, knowing smile. "You made it," he said simply, his voice warm but with a trace of something deeper in it. Hana nodded, her throat tight. "I wouldn't miss it." Jiwoo stepped aside, gesturing for her to join him. "Come on, I'll introduce you to some people. This isn't exactly a low-key event." As they made their way through the crowd, Jiwoo's hand brushed lightly against hers, a gesture so subtle but loaded with meaning. Hana tried to ignore the quickening of her pulse. It was ridiculous. She was a professional, here for work, not to get caught up in emotions or distractions. But every step she took with Jiwoo by her side only intensified the sense that the night wasn't going to be as easy to navigate as she'd hoped. Across the room, Dr. Elias Kwan was surrounded by a small group of doctors and researchers, his laughter cutting through the hum of conversation. He looked every bit in his element, his polished appearance and easy smile making him an immediate focal point. When Hana returned her focus to Jiwoo, she found him watching her closely, his expression unreadable. Hana had no idea what game they were all playing, or even if there was a game to be played, but for the first time, she felt the weight of their expectations bearing down on her. Later in the evening, during a quiet lull in the event, Hana found herself standing at the bar, sipping on a glass of water. She didn't drink much, never had, but tonight, she needed to keep her head clear. The whirlwind of introductions, handshakes, and polite smiles had left her feeling a little out of place, as though she was playing a role that didn't quite fit her. That's when Dr. Elias Kwan approached. "Dr. Say," he said, his voice smooth and pleasant as he leaned against the bar next to her. "You've been a bit elusive tonight. Is the gala not to your liking?" Hana smiled, not wanting to appear ungrateful. "It's fine, just a lot to take in." Elias raised an eyebrow, his gaze steady and calculating. "You don't strike me as the type to be overwhelmed by a room full of people." Hana couldn't quite figure out how to respond to that. Before she could speak again, Jiwoo appeared at her side, his presence unmistakable. "Dr. Kwan," Jiwoo greeted, his voice low but firm. "Good to see you again." Elias offered him a smile, a little too cordial. "Likewise, Jiwoo. You know Hana, I take it?" Jiwoo glanced at Hana, his expression unreadable. "Of course." The air between the three of them grew charged, but Hana didn't know if it was her own heightened nerves or something more. "You seem to be enjoying the evening," Elias continued, his gaze lingering on Hana for just a second longer than was comfortable. Jiwoo, who had been silent for a beat too long, finally spoke up. "We should head over to the main presentation, it's about to start." Hana looked from one man to the other, feeling the subtle, unspoken shift between them. Neither of them seemed willing to let the other take the spotlight, and she, caught in the middle, suddenly felt very much out of her depth. She forced a smile, excusing herself. "Excuse me, gentlemen, I'll join you shortly." As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the evening was far from over and that this night might change everything. The presentation hall buzzed with murmurs as the spotlight shifted to the podium, where the keynote speaker, a renowned figure in the medical world, began discussing the latest advancements in neurovascular research. Hana stood near the back of the room, her arms crossed, eyes scanning the crowd. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the earlier exchange between Jiwoo and Elias. She couldn't deny the pull of Elias's attention, it was charming. But Jiwoo was something else entirely. He had a way of silently claiming the space around him, and when his gaze landed on her, she could almost feel the weight of his unspoken words. Hana turned her focus back to the speaker, but her mind wandered again. Why had she agreed to come tonight? Her phone buzzed in her clutch, a message from Jiwoo. She quickly read it. "I'll be in the VIP lounge after this. Meet me there?" She hesitated before typing back. "Sure, I'll join you in a bit." The VIP lounge was quieter, more intimate, with soft music playing in the background and an impressive spread of food and drinks. Hana spotted Jiwoo standing by the window, looking out over the city skyline. His back was to her, but he seemed to know she was there even before she stepped inside. "Did you enjoy the presentation?" Jiwoo's voice was low, his tone casual, but there was an edge to it. His posture was relaxed, but Hana could tell he was waiting for her response. Hana nodded. "It was informative. The research seems promising." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I'm glad you think so." She stepped closer, not quite sure how to fill the space between them. Jiwoo's gaze flickered down to her dress, his eyes lingering just a moment too long. "You look beautiful tonight," he said, his words soft, almost too soft for the setting. Hana felt a sudden flush creep up her neck, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Thank you, you're not too bad yourself." There was a beat of silence. Then Jiwoo spoke again, his voice softer, almost thoughtful. "I've been thinking about our conversation earlier, about what's happening with us." Hana froze, unsure how to respond. Her pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," Jiwoo said, taking a step closer. His eyes locked onto hers, unwavering. "There's something between us, Hana. I can't pretend I haven't noticed." Hana swallowed hard, her chest tightening. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jiwoo." She hedged lamely. He raised an eyebrow, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Are you sure?" Before Hana could respond, Elias entered the lounge. His eyes immediately found hers, and his lips curled into a friendly but knowing smile. "I see the two of you are deep in conversation." Jiwoo stepped back, his expression shifting slightly, almost imperceptibly. "Dr. Kwon," he said with a curt nod. Elias approached them with his usual charm, though his gaze never left Hana. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Hana felt the tension thicken. In the room, Jiwoo and Elias were like two alpha wolves circling each other, each aware of the other's presence, each aware of the subtle game being played. And Hana, caught in the middle, felt the weight of both men's attention pressing on her. "I'm just catching up with Dr. Seo," Jiwoo said, his tone polite but clipped. "But we were just about to head back to the main event." Elias didn't seem to take offense, his smile widening. "Of course I wouldn't want to keep you from your business. Dr. Seo, I'd like to speak with you about a potential collaboration. Your most recent work on neural recovery has caught my eye." Hana nodded, though she could sense the underlying tension in Elias's words. "I'd be happy to discuss it when you get a chance at the hospital." Elias glanced at Jiwoo, his eyes lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "I'll leave you two for now." As Elias walked away, Jiwoo's gaze followed him for a moment, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. When he turned back to Hana, his voice was low, almost too controlled. "He's always making moves." Hana raised an eyebrow, unsure where the conversation was heading. "What do you mean by that?" Jiwoo smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Elias likes to be seen as the one in control. He likes to know who's a threat and who isn't. And right now, Hana, you're one of the most valuable people in this room. Hana's breath caught in her throat. I don't think I like the way you're framing this. Jiwoo shrugged, his casual demeanor not fooling anyone. I'm just saying, there's more at play here than you realize. You've got options, Hana. You just need to decide which direction you want to go. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Hana wasn't sure if he was talking about her career, her relationships, or something else entirely. Before she could respond, the sound of applause echoed through the lounge as the speaker wrapped up. Jiwoo's gaze softened for a moment, but it didn't quite erase the tension in the room. Well, it looks like the night is winding down. We should get back, he said. Hana nodded, but as she moved to follow him, something in her stirred. She didn't know what she wanted from Jiwoo or Elias for that matter, but she was starting to realize that this evening was about far more than just the gala. It was about choices, about direction. And for the first time, Hana felt the weight of both men's attention bearing down on her, and she wasn't sure which path she would choose. The gala resumed in full swing, now transitioning into the mingling and donors phase of the evening. Hana sipped sparkling water from a slender flute glass, carefully navigating between conversations, industry giants, and overly familiar colleagues. The event was luxurious enough to make anyone feel like a chess piece in someone else's game. She was halfway through listening to a board member recount a rather dry anecdote when a soft voice slid beside her. Enjoying yourself? Elias asked, his tone smooth and low. Hana glanced at him. He was holding a glass of red wine, and the slightest glint in his eyes betraying amusement. I've heard the word innovation misused at least 12 times tonight, so let's just say it's been educational. Elias chuckled. You handle these things better than I thought. It's not easy to balance genuine intelligence and diplomacy. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both, he replied easily. Then, more seriously, I meant what I said earlier, about working together, but also about you. You don't see it, do you? Hana blinked. See what? How everyone gravitates toward you in this field. Even Jiwoo. Her lips parted, the words catching in her throat. I'm not saying that to stir anything, Elias continued. But I've worked in Europe, Asia, the States. People like Jiwoo, they don't let many in. But the way he looks at you? That's not neutral. She didn't respond, because she didn't know how to. Elias gave her a knowing smile, then turned to the approaching crowd. We'll talk later. Don't disappear on me.